Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael and I'm building a steeply sloping commercial street on my model Yorkshire town set in 1993. I've started to add the stone facade to the first building at the bottom of Station Road. After planning this building for so long, I'm really happy to start seeing a real building starting to emerge from the baseboard. Let's take a look at how I approached that this week then, in Base Facade, Building Station Road, Part 7. If you've watched earlier videos in this series, you'll be familiar with the design for this building. It's got 3 overlapping parts with an interesting roofline. We've seen the drawings, we've seen the serial packet mock-up, and we saw the framework last week. I love it when all of this comes together and we see a real building starting to emerge. To make the base layers, I print the shapes onto A4 sticky labels. I never actually throw away a part used label. Here's a slice of label from last week. I just put it into the printer's paper tray, and as long as the components that I'm printing fit, it goes through the printer and comes out. You're not restricted to A4 sized lengths, and it's a great way of maximising the use of the labels. I make facades 2 layers of card thick. Why? Well, the main reason is that I can use the inner layer to help me align the windows later. For this building, I did not want the windows to be recessed too far, so I'm using 2 layers of 0.5mm card. I draw one with the correct window apertures, and then one with the apertures enlarged by a couple of millimetres. Also on the sheet is a support which will make the outer wall near the middle part of the building, and the window frames for later. This is the 0.5mm grey board that I'm using. I bought this in bulk, 500 sheets, about 3 years ago, and it works out at just under 6p a sheet. I can save that 6p this time though, because the components will fit onto this offcut from an earlier build, and that'll save some wastage as well. The label sticks easily to the card and it's smoothed down. To celebrate the start of a new build, I add a new blade to my knife. These blades comprise 7 snap-off parts, giving 8 fresh blades as you work your way down it. I bought them on eBay 2 years ago in a pack of 10 for £3.99. That gives 80 fresh blades at a cost of just under 5p each. I replaced my scalpel blade too. I bought these Swan Morton 10A blades in January 2021. They cost me £13.97 for 100 on eBay, and that makes them about 14p each. With the fresh blade, I cut the window apertures first. I overcut the corners slightly so that the rectangular waste piece should drop cleanly out. I cut with my ruler along the outer edge of the windows, as I feel that this makes it easier to see what I'm doing, and it protects the part of the card that I want to keep. Sometimes the inner part pops out cleanly, but sometimes I need to recut the corners to avoid the fluffy bits of leftover card that can appear if you tear it slightly. It's always good to take your time at this point. I use the scalpel for the fine work, and the cheaper and easier to wield larger knife for the bigger cuts. Here are the 2 layers then. On top of each other, you can see the recess that the inner layer gives for the window frames later. The challenge with this building is the centre tower part. It overlaps the right side of this section by a short distance, just 2mm. We have 2 outer walls to think about, the outer of the right side of this building and the outer of the left side of the tower. I find that my card is generally 1.2 and 0.7mm thick, so I can't use 2 layers of 1mm card. I decided to make it fit by using a 0.5mm wall here and a 1mm wall here. So here is the 0.5mm wall. I need to get it perfectly aligned with where the right side of the building needs to be. I use the York magnetic mates to provide a right-angled base in the right place. And then I can just glue the wall with it resting against the jig. Whilst that glue's going off, we can layer the 2 parts of the facade. A simple covering of PVA on the bottom part, and the top part drops on top. With luck, this should now exactly fit the frame over here. I use Scale Scene's Ashlar texture printed onto 110 GSM matte photo paper. I note which part is the bottom of the side to make sure I get the texture the right way around. Once cut out with the scalpel, the texture drops onto a light bed of PVA glue. The nice thing about PVA is that it takes a few seconds to grab the paper, so I can slide it around a bit until it is in the exact right place. I wrap the texture around the open window apertures so that there are no visible card edges. I use the back of the scalpel to gently score the paper, and then use my crochet hook to bend the flaps over. By applying pressure here, I find I can get a really crisp fold. Finally, a bead of glue, and then a combination of fine crochet hook and fat fingers gets the paper flaps glued down. This is starting to look good. Let's do the windows now. So here are the window frames on sticky label. And here is a scratty piece of acetate that I took from some old packaging in the dim and distant past. The frames peel and stick to the acetate, and then I crisscross the bars with my scalpel. I've made a video on this sticky label method for windows, and I'll link to it at the end of this video. You can also see step-by-step photos of the process in my article in the September 2023 issue of BRM, if you can still get your hands on that. Eventually, the parts that cover the glazing just peel out in a very satisfying way. And we're left with the windows ready to cut out and place in the building. Before that though, I still have the sill of the upper window to add. After being cut out, I remove the white paper edges with a dampened watercolour pencil and then drop it into position with a bit of PVA. And then I finally fold it round. Make sure that the PVA has dried a bit before folding, otherwise you risk bending the front part and making it look skewed. Here's the cut out acetate window. I made it the same size as the aperture in the inner layer of card. This means that it just drops into the ready-made hole and therefore aligns perfectly with the opening on the building's frontage. There we go. With the glazing in place, it's time to add curtains and blinds. I add scraps of 1mm card behind the windows and then stick the curtains and blinds to these. The small distance between the glazing and the fabric really does lend a 3D effect to the window, and the feeling of depth is greatly enhanced. I finish off the windows with a bit of black tape. I don't light my buildings or add interiors, so this keeps things looking neat. It's finally time to stick the façade to the frame, a bead of PVA all round, and then the façade just drops on top. I take time to get it aligned as perfectly as I can along each edge. The nature of PVA, as opposed to some more dedicated card glues, is that it stays wet long enough for you to really take your time on this part. Just the outer wall to do now. I run a watercolour pencil along the white line of the paper and test fit the texture of the wall. A bit of glue and the texture slides into place. Sometimes I fold my textures around the walls and other times I do it like this. This way gives a crisper edge as long as all of the card parts are perfectly aligned, but it does give a slight line where the edge of the paper is. I chop and change techniques in this regard, but this technique is definitely useful when working with small components, like the legs of the market tower. So the building is currently looking like this. My channel members have been following along with the construction of the tower and the bay windows. I'll be showing these next week, but if you'd like to follow along with progress, please do consider joining my channel as a member. I make a weekly members only video and post a lot of pictures of my progress. If you're interested in the sticky label method for windows, that video is here. Next week, I will show you how I made the tower and the bay windows then. So until then, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.